Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon. I would like to thank the organizer, IBPA, as well as MPOC, the sponsor of this session, to invite me and to share with you some fact and figures about the myths and fact about the Malaysian palm oil, and hopefully that will also help some of you, especially who are using palm oil, especially in your products for import or export, as well as for local consumption and to your consumers. So hopefully this will be some good information that you could actually use, especially when there's any negative allegation about the palm oil. Okay, could I get the facts about palm oil that I hope that can share with all of you, and then a very brief conclusion. So let's, for the introduction, is just to share with you about the oil palm. You might have heard before, but basically just to show to you. It's not pointer's not working anyway. Just to show you that, you can see on the screen that basically palm oil contributing around 32% or 1/3 of the total oil and fat produced. There's around 17 different types of oil and fat, and 1/3 of that actually is being contributed by palm oil. And of course, in terms of the export, you can see 54% or half of what has been exported in the world are basically basically is by palm oil. So that's why we can see how important is palm oil in the world, and why also it also been targeted by many people out there about, because of the importance of this palm oil. It's very important also, and of course why they've also been targeted, as well as very important for us to make sure that the safety and all the regulation about the palm oil is very important. And Malaysia being the second world largest producer and exporter of palm oil after Indonesia, and of course we have Thailand currently is at the third largest producer. And as information about Malaysia, so we are the 5th largest producer of oil and fat in the country. In the world. We only 33 million population. We are basically one of the important player in oil and fat, and around 7.5% of total global oil and fat production actually is coming from Malaysia. And we are the second largest exporter of oil and fat. And of course, 16.5% of total global oil and fat export are from Malaysia, and 31% of total global palm oil export actually, or trade by Malaysia. So this shows how important is the oil palm industry to the country. And looking at India, I think of course India has always been the number one what we call market for Malaysian palm oil, and it's been increasing. But if you look at this year, so far, we have exported around 18.5% of our total export of Malaysia actually going to India. And what you can see, actually most of our export are actually in the form of CPO. We can see around 80% of our export are actually as CPO, and another around 20% actually is processed palm oil. As we know, in India there's a lot of what we call crushing as well as refinery activities here. That's why I think it's very important for them to export a lot of to import a lot of the crude palm oil. And let's look at the myths and fact about the oil palm or palm oil. So of course, first we heard a lot about environment. People talk about the palm oil palm cultivation causing what we call environmental damage. What we call the loss of the deforestation, environmental issue, and talk about killing of orangutan and whatnot. But the actual fact is the palm oil, if you look at the whole total global land use for food production, it's around 70% actually is actually the land being used actually for livestock. And then of course then the others come in, and a small portion actually is by, if I can't show you, but if you see in the bracket, the red color there actually is referring to oils and seed, okay, beside oil palm. And oil palm, actually there's a small line which you can see. we only occupy around 0.48% or less than half a percent. And we're talking about Malaysia, is only 0.1% of the total land being used for food production. So that's why we can see, as a whole, oil palm, which contributing 1/3 of the production of edible oil, we only occupy 0.5% of the total agriculture area for producing this palm oil. So definitely to say that we are the cause of deforestation causing the oil environmental effect is definitely not true. And let's look at of course they are talking about, we also, while doing that, we also killing the orangutan, one of the very what we call important species in Malaysia. Of course, Malaysia is one of the 12 mega biodiversity country. What we can see, actually, we have a lot of sanctuary taking care of the orangutan and how we work together, and there's a lot of initiative to protect them. At the same time, we also have the Malaysian Sustainable Palm Oil certification that also protect its orangutan. I'm not going to touch anything else, anything more on this, since there is the forte of Datuk, so let him talk more about MSPO. But definitely, there are also laws and regulation to make sure that the orangutan are protected. And then it's a cheap oil, so definitely it's for low-income group. That's what people say. But is it true? Why is it cheap? Is it cheap because it's low quality? Is it cheap because it doesn't contain anything good? No. It's just that because if you can look here, in terms of productivity, of course, one of the reasons also why we can see here in Telangana, and also one of the national edible oil mission in India is putting oil palm as one of their main target, because we know it's a very productive crop compared to the others, and we use less. If we're talking about all the total total what we call the 17 oil and fat crop, we're talking about major crop, we are basically 5 to 8 times more productive, and we're talking about, we only occupy 8% of the total oil crop land, and we're producing 1/3 of that. So that shows how productive, and that costs the price to come cheaper. And of course, it's been produced in this part of the world, in Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and inshallah we're also going to produce more in India. Our cost of production is much cheaper than if you produce in Europe, USA. Their crop are very expensive, and of course with a lot of subsidies. So that's why this kind of, we could actually produce it at much cheaper rate. And of course, and it's also part of our life. You can see almost 50% of the product in our supermarket share are actually containing palm oil. So that shows that it's important. It's not cheap. Maybe because some places where this may be used a lot for the poor people, but it doesn't not mean this is low quality. Actually, it's a good quality, very healthy. It's just that it's very cheap. So we are very lucky and blessed to have palm oil. And of course, palm oil is like ghee and should be avoided in household consumption, because people thought ghee have a lot of saturated as well as what we call trans fat. But if you look at actually palm oil, because palm oil itself is really semi-solid, so that means we can produce the oil without any what we call hydrogenation, and it's trans-free. So basically, if you use vanaspati, which is actually containing palm oil, or palm oil, or palm kernel oil, it's safe, and actually it's safe of consumption. So that means there's no issue with using palm oil for producing ghee, or to produce vanaspati, or we call plant-based ghee. So that can be a very good alternative to the oil-based ghee. Dairy oil-based ghee. Okay. Next, we look about the people talking about saturated fat. So it's very harmful. There's a lot of theory out there saying that it's very consuming. Saturated fat will cause a lot of heart issues and whatnot. But if you look at the composition here, the red color here is actually referring to saturated fat. You can see that around in palm oil is almost 40 to 45% actually saturated, and you also have a lot in lard as well as cocoa butter. But and that's where compared to the other soft oil. But remember, this also helps us because saturated, it causes us good because we can easily make it into solid fat to make it margarine and whatnot without issue of trans fat. And even though we have this amount of saturated fat, it does not actually cause any issues with health issues. You can see from a lot of study. This is not our what we call studies done only in Malaysia. You can see it's done in Australia, in India, in China, in Denmark, Italy. That it has been shown that palm oil when actually consumed, and the human study shows that means intake of palm oil compared to other oil. In this case, we are compared with olive oil, canola, and groundnut or peanut oil. It does not increase the cholesterol. So they behave, even though palm oil contains the saturated fat, but when we consume, it behaves same like the other soft oil. So that it does not really going to increase your cholesterol. And also they said, I mean, when you consume palm oil, it can actually cause cardiovascular related disease. And there's a lot of studies out there. You can see that, I mean, there's a lot of studies shows that, I mean, palm oil does not really affect. I mean, there's a clinical study even to show that it does not actually really cause or actually associated with the heart disease. There's a lot of fact and there's a lot of publication now to indicate that. And also, again, they say palm oil also produces a lot of cholesterol. Of course, cholesterol is bad for you, can cause diabetes and whatnot. But from studies, we have shown, I mean, there's what we call the meta studies being carried out, where we compare, and I mean, during the studies, we look at what we call lipid markers that can actually indicate whether any cholesterol being produced and whether it's going to have any effect on your heart. So we look at total cholesterol, low density lipoprotein, high density triglyceride, and so on. And when we did the study and comparing with the other soft oil, we can see in the blood lipid, all these things does not really been affected. So that means they're really safe and it's not going to cause to increase your cholesterol. So you are safe to consume palm oil. This is not, I'm just saying, but this is from literature and studies that have been carried out. And of course, when we talk about trans fat, I also mentioned that, I mean, other soft oil, you need to go through hydrogenation and some process which can actually produce from liquid to become solid. So you may have this problem with trans fat, but palm oil is already semi-solid, so you will not have any problem with trans fat. And it's free from trans fat, it's natural solid fat, so there's a lot of advantage of using palm oil, especially as a replacer for trans fat. So it is safe. And I'm sorry I have to rush a bit because of the time. I can see the time, I already have 0 time left. But anyway, palm oil does not have any nutritional benefit. It's not like the normal oil, you know. But palm oil have a lot of other advantages. You can see palm oil rich with keratin, vitamin E, and other benefits like squalene, lecithin, and so on. In fact, when there's a special oil we call red palm oil, I'm not sure how extensive it may export, but definitely something that we should consider. There's very high level of keratin. It's good for your heart and also good for your anti-cancer. At the same time, palm oil contains a lot of vitamin E, tocotrienol, especially tocotrienol. There are 2 types of vitamin E, tocotrienol and tocopherol. Tocotrienol is much more potent and much more effective and very rich in our palm oil. Even our cooking oil contains a lot of vitamin E, which is good for actually for health reasons, including anti-Alzheimer and so on. And of course, there's also issue saying that there's causes 3-MCPD or carcinogenic problem. Of course, there's a study done by EFSA in 2016, but that was actually because the nature of palm oil it is going through what we call a lot of physical refining, where you actually expose the crude oil to high temperature above 230 degrees Celsius. Whenever there's a presence of chlorine can come from many sources, including from the water during your milling process. And of course, that's why in some studies show that palm oil contains the highest. But actually, there are already available techniques, there are already available method that actually there's what we call the CPO washing. You can simply wash and we can see more than 90% of the chlorine that move, and this is one of the studies been carried out, and we have shown that up to 17 times doing the same thing, we can actually produce very low level of chlorine, which definitely you will produce the oil with a very low level of 3-MCPD. And I think with that note, I think I would like to say as a conclusion, that means Malaysia, we have more than 100 years of experience with this oil palm. That means palm oil is basically the most versatile ingredient. I don't have the opportunity to explain in detail, but I'm sure if you remember during my colleague from Thailand have shown the versatility and the various products that can produce from palm oil. And of course, it's a balanced oil. You have both saturated and unsaturated, and of course also a lower amount of polyunsaturated, and of course it is trans-free because of the semi-solid condition, as well as a very healthier frying oil. I think there's a study been ongoing, and there's a lot of studies have shown that, I mean, when you talk about frying, palm oil shows the best stability. I mean, there's a studies that we have done up to 56 hours of frying, continuous frying. The oxidation of the oil is very minimum as compared to other soft oil. So I think with that, thank you so much for your kind attention.